welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. I'm Lisa College. I'm the CEO and founder of Lisa College Consulting. And in this podcast, I talk about how investing in a single initiative, a cognitive inclusion initiative, will benefit your business in terms of its people metrics, think retention, think engagement, think happiness, as well as its business metrics. Think ability to attract the top talent and your profitability and your innovation, for example. I'm currently recording a series of episodes of the podcast to introduce myself to you, to let you get to know me, because I've just launched the podcast. And in this episode, what I'm going to talk about is de-risking cultural change, my approach to transforming your organization. A couple of people have asked me, why is this topic in your introductory Meet Lisa theme? And I decided to put it here because I think that it's a good example of the way that I work. It's a good way to help you to get to know me in the way that I think about things. If you're a leader, in addition, given what I'm talking about, given talking about a cognitive inclusion program, which will be run in terms of changing your culture, you may have concerns about change, especially cultural change. They may come to the top of your mind. And I'm not a person who likes to gloss over concerns. I like to tackle them head on, and I'd rather address that concern or that fear, if we may even call it something that strong, your fear of the risk sooner rather than later. So cultural change is risky. Yes, it is. You're trying to fundamentally change your culture and the collective behavior of all the people who work in your organization. So there is risk involved. But what I want to suggest is that it's no more risky than you deciding to build and launch a new product. When you build and launch a new product, you still need to change behavior. You need to change buying behavior and user behavior. I think that the difference is that more of us have experience with products and technology and sales and the things directly involved in building and launching a new product than we do in terms of designing and putting a culture in place, right? So it's actually the unknown which makes this feel more risky than any other large initiative, but it's not, it's as risky. So if it helps you, think about culture as a product. It's a tangible thing. It can be measured. Its impacts are felt by everybody who works in your organization. So it's an important, tangible asset that can give your organization a competitive advantage if you do it right. So let's think about how to change it. Now, the literature says that cultural change initiatives which are successful all have 4 things in common. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, share those 4 things. And secondly, I'm going to share 3 other things which I have found from my personal experience work really, really well, in addition to leading successful change initiatives. So let's get going, first of all, with the factors that successful change initiatives have in common that we can find in the business literature. The first one is that organizational leadership has to be engaged. They have to invest in an initiative as a priority. They have to give space to it, and they have to role model whatever changes it is that they want to see. And sometimes I see leaders start to sweat when they hear that, but I'm not saying that you need to have all the answers and you need to do everything perfectly. That's not the same thing that I'm saying at all. What I mean is that you have to clearly communicate to your organization that this cultural change initiative is a priority for you. You do your best to exemplify the behavior that you want. And if you mess it up occasionally or you're not sure, that's fine. You need to show a change in behavior. You need to show efforts in the direction that you want other people to move in. You need to dedicate time to talking about the initiative, talking about your experiences with it and the results as they are at the moment. Time in meetings talking about that. You need to ask questions of people, how they're finding it. And I think it's also great if you can share when you've had a go at something, but it didn't quite work as you wanted, or maybe you think you can do it better. So you also show that the change that you want is a process, and it's important to take steps towards the place that you want to go rather than to get there immediately and expect everybody to be perfect. So leadership on board as a role model, and clearly investing in the change is rule number one. The second factor that successful cultural change initiatives have in common is to get people on board, and that's all about giving people a common purpose. Right? You need to be very explicit about what you're trying to achieve and also why you want to achieve that. Remember that although you may have been thinking about this for months or years, most of your organization does not live in your head. There's only one person in your organization who lives in your head. For other people, it's not clear unless you explain it, what you want to do and why you want to do it. So you have to be really explicit. Make the explanation, make the communication personal. Try and form an emotional connection between what you're trying to do and the people it's going to impact. Explain to them what the outcome is going to be. Why is this going to be better for you? Explain what it will mean for them. That's something that does take time. I think it's worth testing it as well before you go out with it. But really, whatever the process is by which you achieve that, it's really important to get people on board by explicitly communicating a common purpose. The third shared element of successful change initiatives is that people are upskilled with the skills that they need to have to take part in the change that you're asking for. You can't just say to people, I want you to do that instead of this, and expect that they know how to do it. It's not that easy. Even if what you're asking for sounds quite simple changes in behavior, it's difficult to change habits which people have built up over a lifetime and probably haven't even thought of as a habit. It's just something that they do automatically. Upskilling people is critical. In that area, it's important to remember that people learn by doing things as well as by listening. So you need to make sure that people have the opportunity to test things out, try things out, experiment in a safe environment so that they can really get the changes and the skills that you are asking for into their systems. It's also great if you can encourage your team members to upskill each other. A great way to remember things and to remember new skills that you're learning is to share with others how you're applying what you've learned. So try to do that as well when you're upskilling people. The fourth and final element shared by all of the cultural change initiatives which are successful is that in your organization, you find ways to reinforce the behavior that you want by embedding it in your processes and policies and recognizing it in your processes and policies. It's no good saying that you want one thing while you reward something that's different. I'm going to give an example from the world of research. And it's because I think that most people listening to this podcast are probably in the corporate world, and I want you to think about the message that I'm giving rather than really get bogged down in the particular example. So for example, in the world of research, then this would mean not saying that you want high impact, influential publications from your researchers, while evaluating researchers on how many papers they've published in a year. Volume and quality are not necessarily the same. In fact, they're usually quite different. Also in research, it means that you don't expect you don't communicate to your researchers that you want them to be great teachers and educators of your students, while you only evaluate them based on their research outputs. What you evaluate people on has to be in line with what you are telling them you want to do. So that's the four things, as I say, that you will find in the business literature, which all successful cultural change initiatives have in common. And I said I would also share three things which I have found also really help. So what have I found to be essential? The first thing is finding influencers and getting influencers on board. Now, this is in some ways an extension of the point that I made about making sure that leadership is visibly on board, but it's not the same. Yes, your literal formal leadership needs to be involved in a cultural change initiative, but you also need to look for significant others who influence the opinions of many other people in your organization, other people who can act as role models who are not formally a leader, who are maybe not formally in the C-suite. I call these people influencers. Other people look to them. They will really, really help you if they get on board and start advocating for the change that you're making and start sharing examples of what that change has meant to them, of how it has improved their life, happiness, success in your business. That's the first thing that I found. Second thing is to involve people. All right, and this is not the same as the points that I made about getting people on board with a common purpose and upskilling people. You can do both of those things. You can try to do both of those things by telling people what you're going to do and teaching them to do it and expecting them to put those things in place. That's different than involving people in actually working out how to make the vision that you put in front of them a reality. Now, of course, some of the things that you want to lay out in your vision are not negotiable, right? Some of the things are fixed. It's just how it is. You want this result or you want this behavior, and that's it, no discussion. But within that framework, there are many things which you shouldn't really care about how they are done, so long as they give you the result that you want. So that's a great opportunity to ask people to work out how you can achieve the things that are in your non-negotiable framework, right? You give people the freedom to deliver you the results that you want, and that is a great way to get their buy-in and their passion and their advocacy. So set up meetings, explain to people what you want, ask them for feedback and show them how the feedback that they have given is incorporated into what you're doing. Set up teams, give them goals, and recognize people for their contribution to making your vision a reality. This kind of approach is called freedom within a framework. You don't need all the answers. You need to set a vision, you need to set a direction which everybody can universally get behind, but your organization has the answers. Trust them to find the answers, and that will involve and engage people in your vision, the best way of getting people moving and getting people on board. The last thing that I'll mention, which I have found is indispensable in successful cultural change, is an agile mindset. Now, I'm not talking about the agile process. Let me be very clear. I'm not talking about the agile process. For example, the Scrum process, 2-week sprints, backlog grooming. I'm not talking about imposing something like that. I'm talking about a way of thinking, a style of thinking, which helps in long-term change initiatives. So what do I mean? The first thing is that it's important to do things in small steps. When you're looking at a big change, especially cultural change, where probably not many people have experience of putting that in place, it's important to get moving. There's a real danger that you can spend months and months and months in a PowerPoint over planning and not doing anything. As soon as you start, your beautifully planned PowerPoint will be pretty much irrelevant. So doing things in small steps, just finding one way to start moving, is a really important way to de-risk cultural change, because you prevent inertia, which really is a real danger. Another advantage of taking a first small step or multiple small steps is that it's easy to course correct small steps. You can take a small step and then revert or reverse, but you're never going to put yourself in a position that is irreversible or that you're stuck in. The second aspect of an agile mindset is the idea that you are going to deliver small units of value So the agile process calls them minimum viable products, but small units of value. On a regular basis, you're going to put those out quite often, and those small units of value will accumulate. They represent progress. When people see progress, they are on board and they want to do more. It's a great way to keep people with you for a long change program. Nothing is more motivating than seeing the progress that you're making. So it's really important with an agile mindset to think about tangible pieces of value. It doesn't have to be a product. It could also be something like the principles by which we want to behave, or 3 things that we want all of our customers to say about us, or how I want people to feel when they leave a meeting that I've run. Right? Those are also tangible pieces of value that you can put out in a regular way, that provide people the opportunity to engage, but also show how you're making progress. And the last element of the agile mindset, which I'll talk about in this episode, is to learn from things that go wrong. In any big project, some things will go wrong, or maybe they won't go wrong, but they won't go quite as you expected them to go. If you're taking the small steps that I already mentioned, they will help you to validate the direction of travel. So the chance that you're going wrong is much lower. And if you do go wrong, okay, it was a small step. It's not the end of the world. As I said, you can course correct or reverse. The other part of learning from things that go wrong is not having a blaming culture. You need to support your team when they try something, when they take a step, when they experiment. If something didn't happen as expected, okay, it's not the end of the world. What did you learn? How can it help you in the future? That's a really important aspect of the agile mindset. So that's the broad strokes of how I de-risk change. Just to run through them again quickly, what the literature says is that leadership have to be on board, your organization, people in your organization have to be on board with a common purpose. You have to upskill people with the skills required for change, and you need to reinforce the behavior that you want by making sure that you reward and recognize it in your processes and policies. And what I found to be essential is that you need to find influencers, people not formally in your leadership, but influencers. You need to give people opportunities to be involved and listen to them. And you need to have an agile, the small a, mindset, not agile process, an agile mindset, doing things in small steps, regularly delivering value and learning from things that go wrong or differently to as expected. So that's how I de-risk change. Of course, there's more to it day by day, but that's the broad strokes. And I hope that this episode has given you reassurance that a cultural change program doesn't have to be that different from launching a new product. It can be done. It's not doomed to failure. Leading cultural change is a skill set like any other, and it is available in the marketplace. In the next episode, I'm going to give you 3 examples of how I've applied some of these principles to drive different types of lasting change. But in the meantime, I will say thank you for listening.